Welcome to Bamfordrose and another question of the week. This week we're going to call it Aston's bulletproof engines, because by and largely they are extremely bulletproof. If you compare them to other automakers of similar niches, then because of, certainly for V8 and DB9, because of the arduous test standards that Ford made Aston follow, means that by and largely these engines are bulletproof. And both V8 4.3, 4.7 and V12 in DB9, all the iterations of DB9, V12V and DBS, leading up to the 5.2, I'm not going to include the 5.2 turbo in this, all of those powertrains are bomb-proof. As a workshop, we're not rebuilding lots and lots and lots. Obviously there are a few. An engine is a very complex mechanical component. It's going to go wrong in a few cases, and that means that workshops are going to have to rebuild a few engines, but it's not widespread. There's no Achilles heel that affects absolutely all of them. There are obviously problems that do affect some of them, and DB9 engine tick will be one for the V12, so that could be the small ambush or liner wearing oval, or on V8 it could be tappet shims that they're appearing quite common to reshim. There's the odd big end failure which results in a catastrophic failure, need a replacement engine, but it's extremely few and far between. So I just wanted to talk about each engine, because some of the videos that we've done before have raised a lot of comments about how poor a luxury performance car brand looks if its product is showing the issues that we've reported. So in fairness and in balance, we really do need to be pragmatic, rationalise the statement, and in the main these engines are bomb-proof. The few failures that they do have, it's important to know what they are, and at point of purchase know that you're not buying a car that's potentially got these problems, because at that point you could be buying yourself into a big problem, and it's best to do some due diligence and avoid those. So we do make videos about all the problems that there are, but that's not to say that the brand is afflicted across the board with these problems. So if we look at the 4.3 V8 and 4.7, the crank rods, pistons and valve train, this is all bulletproof. On a 4.7 that we tune for the track, put our twin throttle inlet manifold on it, we're pumping out about 550 horsepower, and okay, because it's race, we do put forged connecting rods in, but the sintered rod would run fine at that power. It's not a weak spot. So all those fundamental components are pretty darn bulletproof. The V8, 4.3, 4.7, a few of them can develop ticking sounds, which is the valve train. It's a classic valve train tapping, and it needs reshim of the valves. On the inlet side, it's impossible to do that with the engine in place. You've got to take the engine out. On the exhaust side, you can measure the clearance between the cam and the bucket, and then re-specify a shim. And even if you were doing both sides of the engine from start to finish, it's a day's work. So it's not a big job to reshim tappets on a V8. But obviously when you start up a V8, get it warm, let it tick over, if there was any valve train noise, you'd be able to hear this distinct metallic tapping noise come from the top end, and with the bonnet up you'd be able to hear that. Some of the early 4.7s have got this rattling sound, and you can hear this from the underside of the car, and this is on some models put down to the oil pump scavenge, so pressure pump, scavenge pump, the chain system on that dry sump system, and it will make that sound forever. It's just a bit harsh, it sounds a bit rattly, a bit clanky, but if you did 24 hours of Nürburgring, it's going to sound exactly the same at the end as it did at the start. The rest of the V8 range, there are no head gasket failures. There's no excessive oil burning issues. There's no crank piston rod failures. Front cover, that seal can leak, and we've done a video on that, which you can find that in the bio. But apart from that, 4.7, it's really, really hardy. Now the V12. Now there are a few more problems with the V12, but it's certainly not all of them. You'll be aware that we've done DB9 engine tick, and this is really the early V12s. I'm not sure exactly, but this seems limited to what was the Cosworth built V12s as opposed to the AMEP Cologne Aston Martin engine plant factory built V12s, where the liners can wear oval, get a little bit of piston slap, so it needs a reborn new liner, and definitely the small end bush can wear, resulting in a ticking sound, which is resolved with a new little end bush. If you've not seen that video, then search for that in the bio, DB9 engine tick. We've got a series of videos on that. But that really is your 450 bhp DB9 engine, certainly not the 470 or any of the V12V or DBS 510 bhp engines. They can have, the V12 engine can have a few problems with its hydraulic lash adjusters and get a little bit of a ticking sound, but again, this is an in situ job, very, very easy. The breather circuit can fail. Again, we've done a video on that. Please check that one in the bio. What happens there is the breather circuit valves fail. It allows oil to be pulled over into the inlet manifold from the breathing circuit, and if the oil level isn't checked, oil level can drop down below a certain level, which if you took it on a motorway cruise, it will basically seize the bottom end because there's insufficient oil flow. The wider world, I've seen people do this, try and suggest that the Aston engine has got an oil starvation problem, but it actually hasn't. There's no issue with the oil circuit. This is a failure of another component, which as a symptom of that failure causes oil consumption, which then causes the failure. But by and largely, there isn't head gasket issues on a V12. The sump seal and front cover seal, they can leak like the V8 does, but certainly not to the frequency that V8's leak is quite rare. So in general, the V12 engine mechanically extremely strong. It can have coil related misfires, which then cause catalyst to break up, which then cause the debris to be ingested, and the engine fails because of that. But again, that's not a base engine issue. This is a failure of another component which causes a symptom, and it's that symptom which then causes engine failure. And again, like I said about V8, the point of knowing this information is at pre-purchase to make sure you're not buying a problem. So for the V12, it might be a bit over the top because I'm in the trade and I know it, but I wouldn't be buying a V12 that I didn't screw a coolant chemical sniffer for combustion gas in the fluid. So if it's got a head gasket issue, because the line is worn oval and because it's then synced a little bit in the block, you'll then get a little bit of coolant loss, and the chemical sniffer, it's a fluid solution that sits in a bottle that you screw on top of the coolant bottle. That will turn from one colour into a different colour, indicating that there is combustion gases present in the coolant. So you could do that check. Obviously you probably have to get a professional to do that check. It's not a piece of equipment widely available. You'd be revving the engine up, as I've suggested to do in another video, to promote the tick if it was going to happen and check that it wasn't ticking, and you'd be looking underneath to check that there are no oil leaks. So if you've checked all those things at point of purchase and none of those conditions are present, then you know that you're not buying something that's got a problem. Likewise, very, very easy to stick the Aston Martin diagnostic AMDS laptop on the car and look at real-time misfire. If you then see that it's got no misfire, then you know that it hasn't been put at risk of say a correlated misfire, failing the catalyst, which fails the engine. So I just wanted to clear that up and say that these engines, by and largely in the V8 and V12 range of Astons, are by and largely bulletproof. Like any engine, it can have problems, and in a few cars inevitably it's going to go wrong, but the whole brand shouldn't be tarred with that same brush, as it were. And if you're unlucky enough to own the car and it develops a problem, okay, well, you know, it needs fixing. And the other piece of information is to take all these care points away and go and check that if you're buying a car, you're not going to be, or you're not immediately going to be, subjected to these failures. Hope that was helpful, and as ever, if you can, like, subscribe, comment below and hit the bell for notifications.